Taoism is a religious philosophy founded by Lao Tzu in the 6th century BC. It is, along with Confucianism and Buddhism, one of the 3 pillars of Chinese philosophy. Privileging being over appearance, listening to one's deep nature, tuning into the universe, Lao Tzu's teaching has never been so modern. As its name suggests, Taoism is based on the Tao, the source of all things. Taoism is first and foremost about understanding the Tao. It is then a question of adopting an ethic of life in conformity with the Tao. This is the way to follow. Taoism is a total philosophy that touches on metaphysics, cosmology, psychology, ethics, and even political philosophy. After having defined the Tao, we will attempt to describe some of the fundamental principles of Taoism. 1. The balance of forces. In the spirit of the Tao, by observing nature, the seasons, and its cycles, impermanence, the elements, by feeling connected to this nature, man becomes aware that all forms of existence on earth are interdependent and share the same energy. This man is a microcosm within the macrocosm, part of a whole. It is between the energy of earth and the energy of heaven. He is life, and life is movement. The Tao proposes to remain flexible and to adapt to this movement, to enter the dance of life, because everything that stagnates becomes rigid, be it the mind or the body, and in nature. Death and pain transcend life and pleasure as symbolized by the graphic representation of the yin-yang principle. Depicts the 2 great forces of the universe, chiaroscuro, negative, positive, masculine, feminine, both duality and equality in a balance of perfect interdependence. Yin in yang and yang in yin. The balance they find themselves in comes from the harmony of their interaction, not from a struggle. A human being is a part of the whole that we call universe, a part limited in body, mind, time, and in space. Einstein's staff and the representation of the feminine masculine will make you the most feminist of you. But it seduces me enough, especially since there is yang in the feminine and yin in the masculine. 2. Non-action and mental calm. Non-action. This is a concept I have been turning around for some time, feeling that it will take me away from my comfort zones. Help yourself, and heaven will help you, said one of the characters in a fable by Jean de La Fontaine. This proverb has always seemed like common sense to me, and I couldn't see how to reconcile it with doing nothing. The Chinese terms are Wu Wei. Wu meaning not, and Wei, doing or acting. The most common literal translation in French has therefore been non agir. This translation is however misleading because it implies an idea of passivity or inaction, whereas Taoism invites on the contrary to action, but to a right action. The doing, to be avoided, evokes rather a forced action, an interference that hinders or disturbs. We could then translate Wu Wei rather by non-interference. Wu Wei invites us to act in the order of things, in harmony with nature. Despite its negative form, Wu Wei could therefore also be positively translated as true action. Non-action is very present in Taoism, but also in Confucianism and Buddhism. This doctrine also has similarities with Greek Stoicism, which invites us to accept things as they are and not to undertake actions contrary to natural harmony. Insofar as the natural harmony balances itself, there is therefore little to do, except to accompany the movement or slightly help it to begin. Often, a nudge is enough for things to go or return in the right direction, like a marble that is placed in the axis of the slope and which naturally finds its momentum in the configuration of the terrain. It's about following the direction of the wind. The writer Alan Watts used the example of sailing to explain the concept of non-action. Rowing is exhausting and inefficient because the boat goes against the current. On the other hand, Sailing requires no effort, since the boat uses the force of the winds and tides to propel itself. All the art of the sailor is to understand the natural forces that surround him and to use them to his advantage. Water is another reference commonly used to explain non-doing. The river does not fight against the obstacles placed in its path. It accepts them and circumvents them gently and fluidly, although each time it takes the form imposed on it by the meanders of its bed. Its deep nature, which is to be water, remains unchanged. 3. Naturalism. Lao Tzu lays down the principles of being in harmony and confident with reality as it is, in order to be one with nature. Man settles on the earth. The earth is ruled by the universe. The universe is regulated by the Tao. The Tao only regulates itself, he summarizes. The Tao is infinite, serene, empty. It represents the impermanence of the whole, like the endless restarting of the seasons. Nothing is fixed. Everything changes, evolves, and yet remains at the origin of nature itself. He describes the harmony between man and nature, as it alone allows wisdom. To be in harmony would be to go with the flow of life, to imitate the fruitful, creative passivity of nature. Everything that exists in nature, by nature, and for nature, even the spirit. To achieve this harmony, he describes the principle of non-action, Wu Wei, according to which the right movement arises by itself. Right action is conscience without will. It happens naturally. The master acts by letting things take their course, without controlling anything. Having nothing, he therefore has nothing to lose. Better, he doesn't care about anything except the Tao. Can you manage the most vital matters by letting events take their course? Doing does not determine being. The following advice: if you want to be in tune with the Tao, just do your job and then let go, is a good example of this posture. Non-acting means not being in competition, having fun in the game of life, without wanting to win at all costs. Thus, the sage rediscovers his child's heart, according to the principle of phenomenology, which consists of welcoming life with wonder like a child who has discovered it, without prejudices, wanderings, suffering, and in perfect carelessness. Can you let your body become supple like a newborn's? Wisdom is playfulness, childlike wonder. The naturalism expounded by Lao Tzu is intended, by its very essence, to be opposed to any dual thought. It brings a vision of balance, of opposites as part of a whole, as are dark and light in nature. 4. Freedom to be yourself. The self would be a spark of divine consciousness in everyone's heart. Being oneself is in the image described by Lao Tzu of the dancer who is not separated from the dance, a united body and soul. The being is responsible for his existence, his affective, social, spiritual development, and his health. All words, all actions have consequences, so he advises to leave as few traces as possible. Everyone is solely responsible for themselves. To find his responsible freedom, the being will have to purify himself, to dive into his part of darkness, to bring out the light there. Can you purify your intimate vision until you see nothing but your light? The teaching of the way consists in moving away from one's thoughts, prejudices, fears, desires, sufferings, beliefs, knowledge to rediscover the innocence, the carelessness of one's essence. Lao Tzu advises to moderate one's actions. Through the example of work, he advises performing it without investing too much in order to maintain one's freedom of being, which is again similar to the concept of non-action, acting freely without expectation, will, and desire. Run after money and security, and your heart will never be quiet. The communication of the sage comes directly from the heart. The breath is the interaction from which emanates the voice and the way of being present, clear and authentic. Lao Tzu describes the mirror effect, according to which the person in front of us acts in a way that sends us back to our own reality. To be accepted and respected by the whole world, accepting and respecting each other would be the only way. Stay simple, fair and generous. Do what you love without controlling and comparing yourself, satisfied with being yourself. The way of the Tao, the humble voice, will be reflected in the respectful voice of others, dispelling any complication. All rivers flow into the sea, because it is lower than they are. Humility gives us power to fight others. Would be to fight oneself, a part of oneself, the part reflected by the other. This posture of humility and simplicity is the path to clarity illuminated by emptiness. 5. A certain form of anarchism. Taoism can be seen as an anarchist philosophy. Indeed, Taoism calls on the people not to expect their salvation from the rulers, even if the latter are well-meaning, considers counterproductive any attempt to control the population, deems all political ambition bad, rejects laws and institutions, because they grant themselves the monopoly of morality and justice, whereas these values must be cultivated within the population itself, rejects the use of legitimate violence, affirms that only the self-regulation of individuals can lead to happiness and harmony. The teachings that Lao Tzu summarizes are simplicity, patience, and compassion. To hear these techniques, he indicates that the only path is that of the heart. The Tao Te Ching proposes detachment from the ego as a journey towards the Tao, presence, universal love, and natural compassion. Have an open heart, bare of all knowledge or thoughts, trusting your inner vision, following the course of events, and observing yourself in order to gain perspective on yourself and the world. To be soft and flexible, to be a disciple of life. Whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. The Tao is understandable only in the reality of life. It is up to everyone to work with their tools on a daily basis and to create their own path in concrete experience, finding in one's own experience the fundamental and paradoxical truths of the art of living, their essence, named by Lao Tzu as the source, the truth, the Tao.